Noe Perez was a new lawyer when he first met Judge Rudolfo Delgado. He said he was intimidated by the man and his position. Maybe that contributed to his choice to get involved with Delgado on a bribery scheme. In 2008, Perez had a client who didn't have the money to pay for his services. So instead, he compensated the new lawyer with a $15,000 truck. When Delgado got word of this, he approached Perez about purchasing the truck. Usually, judges and lawyers don't make business deals due to the conflict of interest it may raise in court, but this didn't stop Delgado. Perez later stated that he felt too intimidated to accept the money and just gave the truck to the judge. Hidalgo County was named after the famous priest and leader of the Mexican War of Independence, Miguel Hidalgo. Once founded, the county maintained a heavy Hispanic population of 91.9% that's still present today. The Hispanic presence can be seen throughout the culture that the Mexican Americans living there surround themselves with. Sitting right on the border allowed Hidalgo County to be a mixing point for people of two very different countries to come together and make something new. With the population steadily growing, they needed a representative that would look out for their needs. Rudolfo Delgado was elected to the 93rd District Court in 2000. In his position, he was supposed to protect the people of Hidalgo, but instead, he betrayed their trust. For years, Delgado seemed like an average judge who decided every case by the book. His career was flawless until his downfall in 2019, which authorities believe started after a seemingly simple truck purchase. It wasn't until later that Perez realized he had just bought himself credit in the court of Delgado and that his decision would change the course of both of their lives. This began an 8-year relationship where a few bribes took place to swing things favorably in Perez's client's direction. Once authorities became aware of the situation, it wasn't hard for investigators to collect evidence on Delgado. They had multiple videos that showed him being asked for favors while accepting donations. Perez's involvement made him a prime candidate for working as an informant. It was an easy decision for Perez once the FBI started breathing down his neck. In the FBI's criminal complaint against Delgado, he and Perez's scheme was revealed. They would set up their meetings by phone and only talk to each other in code words when speaking about the bribes. These payments were always made in person and in cash or items. Delgado's scheme seemed more like an opportunity than a planned-out crime. Once it was clear between Delgado and Perez what the deal was going to be, the bribes became a regular thing. During the 8-year scheme, Delgado accepted more than $20,000 worth of known bribes if you include the pickup truck. The cash bribes ranged in value. Some were only a few $100, while others were north of $5,000. Perez hid the money in 6 packs of beer to keep things appearing innocent. To wandering eyes, it looked like two friends discussing case law over a few beers. Sure, bribes don't have to be made in cash. In fact, one could argue that a 6-pack constitutes an unethical gift. But think about it. If police investigated every lawyer, politician, or business person that bought someone a drink, there'd be prisons full of guilty bribe makers. The payoffs provided Perez and his clients with multiple advantages in the crooked officials' court. These same favors contributed heavily to Delgado's eventual arrest, as they could be confirmed through court records. These favors included getting his clients out on personal recognizance bonds, which basically is free bail. In short, clients promised to show up for their court date without putting anything up for collateral. Perez enjoyed the benefits of having a judge nestled right in his pocket, while Delgado enjoyed his gifts and money. However, it would be this very relationship that brought the delusion to a screeching halt. When Perez became the star witness against a former judge, their path to prison was pretty much paved. Once the FBI had Perez working for them as a confidential human source, they began setting up a sting operation. The focus of the whole orchestration was to build a case against Delgado by gathering obvious evidence of his crimes. Perez made several phone calls to Delgado while the FBI listened. In these recorded phone calls, the corrupt judge can be heard setting up meetings to accept bribe money. Delgado didn't know that the FBI provided Perez with the money that he used to bribe him with each time. Then they confirmed that the clients were let out on bond right after the bribes were accepted through court records. On January 17, 2018, Perez placed another call to the judge. When the two spoke, they set up a meeting at a restaurant where yet another bribe would occur. When he arrived at the restaurant, Perez was ready to make one last deal. The FBI had given him over $5,000 in a white envelope and equipped him with a wire so they could record the conversation. He texted Delgado and asked him to come outside with money in hand. When the former judge got into the vehicle, Perez explained that he had a case he needed help with in exchange for the money. Delgado accepted and took the money with him. The FBI observed and confirmed all of this, which put the final pin in their case against him. With all the heat on his back, it was evident that Delgado had to step down from his position as a judge. No matter how the investigation and trial went, it would be a devastating blow to his reputation. However, this wasn't enough to stop the conniving judge as he was elected for another position. In 2018, Delgado won the election for the 13th Court of Appeals for the state of Texas. Even with all the trouble surrounding him and his pending trial looming overhead, Delgado was able to come out on top again. The position didn't last long, but how exactly did he get voted in? The answer is straight ticket voting, and it's a relatively simple concept. Basically, it allows someone to vote for everyone aligned with their party by checking one box on the ballot. This meant that Delgado didn't have to do any campaigning. He carried no social media presence and was not seen holding any events. Since he was the only Democrat running for the position, anybody who checked the straight ticket box automatically voted for him. Had they known about the bribery charges looming over his head, they may have voted differently. Delgado didn't need to be clean to win. Instead, he hid behind his party and rode their coattails to victory. He was sworn into office in January of 2019, but was suspended in the same month. Of course, his past caught up with him overnight once everyone realized what had happened. Delgado's attorneys did their best trying to defend their client by questioning the evidence. They argued that anything could have been in the envelopes Delgado got from Perez. During the investigation, Delgado was tipped off about it and tried to undermine the whole thing. He sent a message to Perez asking for the money in check form. He also told Perez to call it a donation. Of course, none of these arguments worked. In the end, the judge and lawyer were both convicted and charged for their crimes. Special Agent Christopher Combs of the FBI was quoted as saying, "The sentencing of Delgado sends a strong message to any public official who chooses to serve him or herself rather than their community. As this case illustrates, the FBI will tirelessly pursue those who betrayed the public trust. We can only hold corrupt officials accountable if people refuse to accept this behavior and are willing to cooperate and come forward with information." Noe Perez was given 2 years in federal prison, while Delgado was sentenced to 6. Delgado was convicted on multiple counts of bribery, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. Perez's sentence would have been worse, but the court gave him leniency for his cooperation with the FBI. He was also supposed to face a disciplinary hearing where he would likely have lost his law license. Instead of facing the music, Perez decided to resign from the position. Delgado's wife, Diana, took the stand at the emotional trial. The defense used the family's turbulent past to explain the judge's actions, which unveiled a heartbreaking story. It all boiled down to that $15,000 truck that started it all. In 2007, Rico Delgado, their eldest son, totaled his car in a fatal accident. Sadly, Roman Delgado, the youngest son, was killed in the crash. The couple was looking for a new truck for Rico, and Perez just happened to have one he was willing to part with. No documented evidence of purchase existed, as Perez handed over the truck believing it'd buy him favors in court. However, Rico's life continued to spiral after the accident as he suffered from substance abuse. Sadly, Rico passed away in 2017. The defense asked the jury to consider the whole story when making their decisions. It's clear the Delgados were going through a lot as a family, but that didn't change the fact that he accepted bribes in court. Delgado and Perez's scheme affected many people, turning them into victims of a crime they didn't know was being committed. Delgado's greed hurt anyone whose trial was affected by bribery. Just like a rock hitting a pond, the ripples from their actions continued to reach out and touch others. Once Perez was convicted of his crimes and sentenced to prison, everything began to fall apart for his clients. It was discovered that he had had hundreds of open cases, all with clients who were unsure of their future or even how to handle the unique situation. All of their calls and questions were left unanswered, while he tried to figure out what to do about their legal situations. Reporters visited Perez's office only to discover it covered in caution tape with a for sale sign hanging on the door. Answers were found for the group of victims when Channel 5 News interviewed local attorney Chris Cavallos. He stated that the best thing to do was think carefully about their actions. The client would have to send a formal letter to Perez's office and then send the same letter to the state bar. He harped on the importance of showing up to court whether or not they receive an answer. Your crimes don't magically disappear when your lawyer gets arrested. Click here to watch one of these next videos. And let us know in the comments section whether a judge or a lawyer should be allowed to practice again if he or she were ever convicted of a felony.